Great. Good morning, students. Welcome back to our virtual career cafe. I'm Amy Good from the Community Education Center and will be your moderator for today. We are recording this session and making it available for other students to join later. So at this time, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. We have Christine Fillhart. She's an occupational therapist with IU9, and Misty Torrey, a speech pathologist, also with the IU9. Brittany Davis, a vision specialist, was unable to join us today. However, I will be providing her answers throughout the session, so you have an idea of what a vision specialist will do. So welcome, guests, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks.
So we're just going to start with telling us a little bit about yourself and your career path. So Misty, do you want to go first?
Sure. I've been a speech therapist with the IU9, I think, for about 14 years. Previously, I was a speech therapist in New York State. Took some time off to stay home with my kiddos, and then went back and got my master's degree and started with the IU. And I teach at Oswego Valley and Austin. I do early intervention and school age.
Great. What inspired you to pursue a career in that field?
Between about my junior and senior year of high school, my parents started fostering children from the foster care system, and then they went on to adopt my four youngest siblings, and they had speech therapy along with occupational therapy and physical therapy. They had a lot of therapies, and my Girl Scout leader was a speech pathologist, and she was their speech pathologist. So I kind of had a background in it, learning about it. And I loved working with them when they were little and helping them talk. And my mom always said I taught them to talk back. So that's how I ended up going to college for it.
Great, great. And then Christine.
Yes, I am an occupational therapist. I've been an occupational therapist for about 20 years, and I've been working for the IU9 for 9 of them. I started out downstate in Philadelphia working. I've worked pretty well across the spectrum in a lot of settings, including nursing homes, home care, hospitals. So I have a vast knowledge of, a lot of the different settings that OT can be found in. We're a very broad career, so I could probably talk for 3 hours about occupational therapy and all that it encompasses. My inspiration for getting started in occupational therapy was when I was in high school. My dad had back surgery, so I would go and observe his therapy sessions. Many of them were in the pool. He received aquatic therapy. So my initial thought was physical therapy. When I started digging more into it, I learned about the PTs, so that's physical therapy, teach people how to walk, and OTs, occupational therapy, teach people how to dance. And I thought, okay, OT's my deal. So yeah, that's what brought me here.
Well, that's interesting that you both had like a family, was kind of like what led you to your career. So that's interesting. So just students, just to give you the answer from Brittany, who is the vision specialist, she said that she is a teacher of the visually impaired, works for the IU9 and visits 9 different districts and goes to homes for birth to 3 kids. What inspired her is that she wanted to be a teacher since 2nd grade, started as a learning support teacher, then moved to life skills. And after a few years in life skills, she moved to a teacher of the visually impaired. All right. So Christine, we'll move on to you. Our next question is to describe a typical day working with students in a school environment.
Okay. So in a school environment, we provide services to students that require assistance with their fine motor skills, or their visual, motor, or perceptual skills. So that's how, like, determining how our brain perceives what our eyes see and how our hands follow through with the task. So there's a lot that goes into that. Even though, we're in education, we do have a strong medical background that helps us to know how our mind and body work together. And what might be going on that we could help fix, essentially, so that they can be functional in their learning environment. So we provide services to kids that have an IEP, an individualized education plan, or a 504 plan. So these are based on educational acts, right? Like an educational system. We do also provide services to early intervention children in the preschool as well that might present with these deficits. So my schedule is busy. I typically see students one time a week for 30 minutes. I mean, that's just a general idea. Some receive more or less. And I develop my own schedule because no one else could possibly do it. I have to go around teacher schedules, learning support schedules, speech therapy sessions, physical therapy sessions, just like they have to go around mine. Like, we all kind of work together. But we, as the therapy team, we also can't pull students out of their lunch or their recess. We're not supposed to take them from specials. So we have limited time where we can see these students and integrate them into our schedule. So that's a little bit of a challenge. Typically seeing kids all day long, every half hour or so. Being an occupational therapist, I do save some time for evaluations and supervision of my occupational therapy assistants. That's something that needs built into my schedule as well. So I'll just show you real quick. I mean, one of the things that I had for today was this sensory bag with some Halloween items in there. And I made it this morning. It's filled with gel and, just little items. And then a list that they can look at and then check off. So one thing that us therapists are really good at doing is grading activities. So I might use this for, a kindergartner, but then also a sixth grader, and then maybe have them write a story incorporating each of those items after we found them. Also some vampire teeth, and they have to pick up little spiders and put them in a container to incorporate the fine motor. So there are a lot of different activities that we use in order to work on the visual and the motor aspects that are needed in order for the students to be successful with handwriting, coloring, cutting, things like that in the school day.
So it seems like you have to be creative to do your job.
Yes, that is definitely a helpful trait for an occupational therapist. We do, I would say, across the board, not only in the school, but in mental health or in the physical disabilities, like in the hospital. You do have to be creative and come up with different crafts at times, or just different activities. Sort of like fun ways to do things, right? Because if I just brought the kids in here and say, okay, we're going to work on handwriting and just, had them write for 30 minutes, that's pretty boring. We want them to be motivated and excited to be in therapy. And, the things that we do seem like playing a lot. But little do they know they're working, and we are targeting a lot of different skills.
I loved how you incorporated Halloween into that teeth and spider activity.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. Misty, do you want to describe a typical day working with students in the school environment?
Sure. My scheduling is very similar to Christine's. I have a caseload. Right now, my caseload is right around 50 kids, which is actually a little bit low. The state limit in Pennsylvania for a speech therapist is 65. And it is not uncommon for me to run at 60 to 65 students. So right now I see about 50 kids. I think I have about 40 sessions a week. And I see those kiddos from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. If my kiddos are working only on speech sounds, I will often see them for 15 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week, because evidence tells us that short, frequent sessions work better for speech sound acquisition. So we thrill and drill. We do a lot of fun activities like Christine does. We use a lot of Play-Doh and puzzles and things to keep them engaged while we work really, really hard in that 15 minutes. I can have a group of 3 little ones in my room and we can do 100 repetitions of sounds each in that 15 minutes. So we use a lot of games and things to reinforce it. And I think I figured out I do 9 to 12 sessions per day, depending on the day. If I have to travel between districts, I have fewer sessions that day. So.
That was going to be one of my questions, if you're out of school all day long or if you have to travel back and forth between schools.
Right now, I actually travel less than I have in the past. I'm assigned to 2 districts. I'm in Oswego Valley and I am in Austin Area School District, which are about an hour apart. Then I also see some children for early intervention, which is ages 3 to 5 before they come to preschool. And then in those cases, I go to their daycares, their homes, their Head Starts, wherever they are, I will travel to them. So right now I'm in about 5 different buildings.
Wow. That seems like a lot. And I can't believe how many you have to see in a week. That's just amazing. So I'll just stick with you. Do you want to talk about some of the biggest challenges or rewards working with students in a school setting?
Sure. I have to say, just in general, going into the speech pathology career and looking at colleges, sit down with financial aid and talk with them about the real cost of the program and what you're going to be investing in time. Unlike other teaching careers, you can't get your bachelor's degree and then work for a district and have them pay for your master's. You have to do it all at once. And so that is a pretty big cost. And there is a lot of discussion in the field if it's a good return on investment, because it is not inexpensive. I did online, which is wonderful. St. Bonaventures is actually opening their online program for Speech Path this year. I was just speaking to one of the professors there, and it will be online. So that's really exciting to have that local. But I had to spend an entire summer in Idaho doing my clinical practicum for my master's degree, or part of my clinical practicum. So that was a cost that you don't think about because I had a family at the time. I had to have an apartment in Idaho and live in Idaho for 8 weeks. So that's a cost in the program that you don't think about. So that's definitely, as you go into the program, a consideration, if you can make that financial investment. And also, we're very niche. We are like OT, we're very broad. We can work in a lot of different areas under our umbrella. But other teaching degrees, you can spread out into other jobs in education a little bit more easily than you can if you have a degree in speech pathology. For example, one of my districts needed an enrichment teacher, and they thought I might be a good candidate for that because I am a teacher and I raised 2 kids who went through the enrichment program. But we couldn't get a straight answer from the state if my certification allowed it, because my certification is so niche. So that's some of the challenges. Scheduling is always a challenge, things like that. But it's so rewarding to work with kids and watch them grow and watch them learn. We do a lot of, I don't say a lot, we have the opportunity to do some augmentative and alternative communication, and handing a kiddo an iPad and who had no words before, and within months he's doing sentences, is pretty darn rewarding.
Yeah.
Watching them grow and gain those skills and that confidence is really just wonderful. So just being able to work with the kids is pretty rewarding.
Great. And Christine, how about you?
Okay, so as far as challenges go, I feel like one of my biggest challenges is getting carryover with the skills that I'm teaching the children in our OT sessions. Carryover in the classrooms is hard because the teachers don't have that one-on-one time to make sure they're holding their pencil just correctly, or making sure they're starting their letters at the top and forming them correctly 100% of the time. There's, 15 to 20 other kids in the classroom, and it's hard for them to have eyes on them all the time. And then at home, if they don't have, 100% support at home, and there's not carryover there while they're doing their homework, or just with different motor things, it kind of takes a little bit longer for us to achieve our goals here in therapy. And also the students really have to be motivated, especially once they get second, third, fourth, fifth, and older. If they want to improve, whatever skills we're working on, their handwriting or shoe tying, we work on shoe tying. If they don't want to tie their shoes, what good is it really me spending time trying to have them tie their shoes if they really don't want to? And in my brain, I'm like, come on, please, you'll feel so good after you get this done. And I guess that leads into the rewards, because when they do accomplish these things, when the teacher says, wow, what an awesome paragraph, I can read every single thing you wrote, that makes them feel good. And when they become more independent with, tying their shoes, or, loading their backpack up and zipping it, all those independent tasks. And to see them doing that, it's cool. It feels good. And I like to see how excited the students are, when they can finally accomplish those things. So.
That's great. I actually was wondering that myself, with you just meeting with them once a week, if, they were continuing to practice that in the classroom setting. So,
Yes,
yeah.
I mean, sometimes they are. I would say a lot of the times they are, and the teachers really do their best. They do what they can to help with that carryover. And I think something that I really didn't touch on was the collaboration with the teachers and the other staff in the school, and the parents too. I mean, I take my students to and from therapy, so that way I can touch base with the teacher every single time. That way, if they have, feedback to give me, oh, this pencil grip isn't working, or, hey, I've noticed a positive change in their legibility, whatever it might be. I feel like that communication is important. I don't communicate with the parents after every session. It's more like progress monitoring at report cards, and then their yearly meetings. Of course, a phone call, if it's warranted in between a phone call or an email. But yeah.
All right. I actually think we might have a question from a student. So Ensign, do you have a question that you wanted to ask?
I was just saying, if I did have a question, you can use the NFB method, which we use at Next Step Skills, which is like, I say my name, you call on me, and that's how we raise our hands, because
Oh,
at
yeah.
Next Step Skills, it's a bunch of visually impaired people. So using that hand thing isn't gonna work.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my question.
Oh yeah, we'll just have yeah, you can like throw it in the chat that you have a question, or we'll just have different times that we'll stop and see if anyone has a question. Sound good?
All right, cool.
All right. So I forgot about Brittany. So students that are just joining us, Brittany Davis couldn't join us today. She's a vision specialist, but I'm gonna read her answers. So in describing a typical workday for her, she said the main difference between working in a school setting and a traditional healthcare setting is that she works with students in their classrooms towards goals that will help them be successful in the education setting, as well as at home and in the community. She uses different assistive technology pieces depending on the student's needs. So some examples are Perkins braillers, magnifiers, refreshable braille displays. And as far as her traveling, she
Entrance?
travels daily. Most days she visits 2 different districts, some days up to 3 districts. The farthest she has traveled is about an hour and 10 minutes one way. And the IE9 does provide her a company car.
Ensign?
And she utilizes email and face-to-face conversations with teachers and other professionals to keep them updated, and talks with parents, calling or emailing, and sending out follow-up emails about conversations for documentation purposes. All right. Before we move on to education requirements, does Misty or Christine, do you have anything additional to add, like about your typical workday or any challenges? Anything additional? You guys are good?
I don't think so, yeah.
Okay. And I think Misty did touched on a little bit about education in her area. Is there anything additional you wanted to add regarding, education requirements or certifications? Maybe what students could start doing now if they were interested in pursuing that career?
As far as speech pathology goes, if you're working in school districts, you need to be certified as a teacher, which means you're going to have to take the same, I think it's the PAPAs or the Praxis that other teachers would have to take. Then you also have to take the speech pathology Praxis. And then if you want to be nationally certified through the American Speech and Hearing Association, that is called your Cs, or your Certificate of Clinical Competence. You would work under another speech pathologist for 1 year through mentorship. And then at the end of that, you could apply for your Cs. Once you have your Cs, you have to continue to pay a pretty steep fee. It's almost pushing $400 a year now to keep your Cs. It might be $350. And then also every 3 years have a certain number of clinical professional development outside of what you also need to maintain your teaching certification. There is some debate in the field whether you need the Cs, but it is a nationally recognized certification. Most employers right now continue to recognize it, and it's sort of the expectation that you would have that. So you're working on almost dual certification if you're working in school districts. If you are working in the medical side of it, you do not have to do that. The educational praxis, you only need to do your speech pathology praxis, but you are generally required to have those Cs, as well as your state licensure, which is just an application.
So do you generally go get your speech pathology degree and then work on your teaching the school stuff, or is it kind of,
When
do
you
you know starting
graduate,
out?
my bachelor's is in the education of the speech and hearing handicap. So it is an education degree with a speech emphasis. My master's is in speech pathology. And so then you get your teaching certificate. You do student teaching just like you would if you were a education major, but it would be in speech. And then you would take the same praxis test that other educators have to complete. I do have to say I wasn't as prepared for those as some other, like if you were an education major, they're preparing you for that praxis all along, the math and ELA one. Speech path did not. We had some education classes. So that is something you're going to have to study on your own and prepare for on your own a little bit more than you would. But it really wasn't terribly difficult if you've made it all the way through college, working towards your bachelor's. You're pretty solid on it.
So how many years does it typically take? Is that a 4-year?
It is a 4-year bachelor's degree and then a 1 to 2 year master's degree, I believe, for most people. Because I took a more non-traditional route, it took me 3.5 years to get my master's. And many programs, I believe, like Clarion and other programs, when you declare your major and you are accepted into the speech pathology major, and I could be incorrect on this because it's been a minute since I've had to look at colleges, you have you pretty much roll into your master's degree because you have to have it. So it's a 5-year program all in.
Okay. And then do you have advice for like what students, who are interested in this career could start, preparing now in high school for?
I thought of just the volunteering opportunities, the working opportunities. I was a lifeguard and swimming instructor before I became a speech pathologist. I worked in daycares, I babysat, I was a camp counselor. I worked with kids, so I had a pretty good background on how to do those creative lessons and how to work with kids in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different settings. And then if you are really interested and you really have a passion for it, I suggest learning the International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA. There's YouTube videos and online things because speech pathologists document speech sound errors using IPA. So if you know that and you're rolling into your first phonetics class, you're going to have a really nice background that will help. And also following speech pathologists on social media. I really like Rebecca from Adventures in Speech Pathology and Meredith from Peachy Speechy. They have a lot of really good ideas and kind of tell you the why behind what they're doing. So it's very interesting. So that's another way to get prepared.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. Christine, how about the education needed for your area?
Yes, so occupational therapy recently moved into requiring a master's in order to practice in any setting. So you do have to get your bachelor's of science, and then you'll get a master's in OT. And again, just like speech, it's about a 5-year program. You are also required to do field works. There's a level 1 and a level 2. Depending on the college or university that you attend, they have different requirements in regards to their field works. I went to Quinnipiac University, and they required us to do 3 level 2 field works. Not many universities, I was going to say do that, but we're doing that at that time. I don't know about the changes now. But although we complained about it a little bit because that was one more 12-week period where we didn't get paid, I am so thankful that I have that under my belt. I did mine in the forensics unit of the state psych hospital in New Jersey, and that was an experience. All of these things that they're just so important to have under your belt and helps you grow as a professional. So after graduation, you do still have to take the National Board Certification of Occupational Therapy exam and pass that. And then you would acquire a state licensure as well. So states require continuing education in order to maintain your license. Pennsylvania requires 24 hours for occupational therapists, I believe, at this time. And you renew every 2 years. In regards to high school students and what I would recommend right now, focus on your sciences, your biology, your anatomy and physiology. OT isn't as education-based as maybe it sounds like speech therapy is. We actually have very little training in education, but I feel like it's just a non-traditional, we're still taught on how to teach people to do things. Like, we're educators, but just not in that traditional sense. Even when we work in the hospitals or in home care, we're still educating others. So I guess also what Misty mentioned, I think is huge: volunteering at the hospitals, at the nursing homes, just really getting out there and doing things with people, socializing, and that's important. In regards to like actually selecting a college for, your further education, really just do your research because, when I was doing my field works, I received a lot of compliments on you know, the knowledge base that I had received from my college compared to others that weren't as prepared. So it really does make a difference. You know, the university that you go to, and, you know, they hold you to the high standards. It might seem scary at first, but it pays off in the end. Yeah. And that financial aspect, Misty, yes, yes. My first job was at a VA hospital, and they did a reimbursement program, which was, you know, super nice to think of, you know, after you graduate, you know, whatever I put into my student loan, they matched that. So I paid mine off pretty quickly. I'm super thankful for that. But yeah, it's the real world, real life thing.
For sure. And I would have to just throw in a little recommendation when you mentioned about schools, you know, all schools are different in what they teach and kind of doing your research. Job shadowing is another great way to gain that information. I've known some students that have done some job shadowing, and the company would tell them like what students that what interns they get from what colleges, and you know which colleges they feel are providing the information for to students that they feel, you know, they need out doing the job in their company. So that's been very helpful for some students to learn that, but just through job shadowing. So I would recommend job shadowing. Okay, so Brittany, our vision specialist here, she says that students can, well, she says a bachelor's degree in education, I guess, is needed. Students can dual major in teacher of the visually impaired, which is TVI, and education. And the TVI certification is also available in a master's degree or certificate for those already teacher certified. So I guess here again, in this area, education, an education degree is needed. She said that for what students can do now, students can take courses through their schools that count towards college credits. So dual enrollment courses in high school can help you save that money and knock off some of your general ed credits that you would need in college. So that's good advice too.
Mhm.
She also said that there is a significant need for TVIs and orientation and mobility specialists, and that Kutztown University and Pittsburgh University are two colleges that offer these programs in Pennsylvania. So that's her information. Do you ladies have anything additional, any advice or anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to touch on before we finish up? That you can think of? Not at this time. So
No,
Ensign, do
I
you?
don't think so.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, no, I don't think so. It's a challenge to get through everything and to jump through all the hoops to get it and to understand what you need to do, because it's really not like if you're going to work in schools, it's really not as clear cut to navigate that process of getting certified for the schools. It took me a little bit. And some of my other, I've mentored some teachers and done some student teaching, and for them, it was very similar, trying to figure out which certifications you need. So if you have an opportunity to work with your college to help you navigate that, that is really helpful. But other than that, no.
I must say, I was surprised. Like, I worked in a school for many years, and I saw positions like yourselves come in and out of the school and work with kids. And I always thought that the hospitals were just sending therapists from the hospital over. I had no clue that you have to get teaching degrees for some of these specialty programs here. So that's very, very interesting and new to me. So I'm sure the students will find that interesting too. All right, Ensign, do you have any questions before we jump off?
Did you know you can get your TVI certification and degree at Salus University as well?
Did not, but it's nice that you mentioned that. Is
Yeah,
that
there were a
something you're
bunch of
interested in, it seems?
Yeah, there were a bunch of TVIs in training at Summer Academy for BBBS. Yeah, OVR BBBS's Summer Academy. There were like 6 TVIs that were training to become TVIs at Kutztown. That they were RAs at Summer Academy.
All right.
I'm visually
Well, great.
impaired, so it's something I'm interested in.
That's
All right,
awesome.
great.
It's definitely a need.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I can
All
also
right.
get AT certified, assistive technology certified. I know
Oh.
someone who is.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Well, I was going to ask Christine, I know you mentioned about your assistants. So that's a different career path too, is becoming like an assistant.
Yes, it is. That would be a certified occupational therapy assistant. Basically, they're kind of the nuts and bolts. I mean, they go out and they do all of the treatments. The only limitation is that they can't do evaluations. I wouldn't say that's the only limitation, but that's the main idea. They are very helpful for us. Some agencies do not utilize OT assistants though, depending on if it's a more independent agency and, you know, if there's not an occupational therapist available to directly supervise them, it just gets a little bit, you know, kind of
Yeah.
sketchy there. Yeah. When I worked in home care, we did have occupational therapy assistants, and it was a pretty big challenge in order for me to get those supervisory hours for them. So, but yeah, we have them here in the IU9 in the schools. We have a lot of occupational therapy assistants, and I couldn't do it without them, and they do very well. And honestly, most of the occupational therapy assistants are more creative than I am usually, because that's what they do. That's what they're trained to do, is implement, you know, different creative tasks and activities in order to achieve the goals that the OTR has set for them. So, and yes, like Ensign was mentioning about like the different certifications, like AT and things like that. I mean, there are endless, it seems like, certifications that you can, you know, go ahead and take classes towards. Assistive technology is one. Misty, can you do that for, I mean, a speech therapist could go ahead and do that as well, right?
Yes, and there's like additional professional development in the area of AAC, augmentative alternative communication. You can get, they're not necessarily certificates, but just like a recognition that you've completed that additional coursework.
Yeah.
And on the track of assistance, other states do allow for speech pathology assistance. Pennsylvania does not. My friend works in Colorado. She's worked in Colorado, Alaska, and California, and she has been a supervisor of SLPAs there, and that is a bachelor's level. So perhaps outside of Pennsylvania, you could start as an SLPA and then, you know, work towards your master's if you wanted to, but Pennsylvania does not allow for SLPAs.
Interesting. All right. All right. Well, I want to thank you ladies for joining us today. Lots of good information. Like I said, I learned things along the way today too. And Ensign, thank you for joining us. And we will end our session for today.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.